Welcome back, fourth graders, to our read aloud of Code 7 Cracking the Code for an Epic Life by Brian R. Johnson. Chapter 3 Handle with Care. Monday, Genevieve's homeroom teacher, Miss Skeen, held up an egg at the front of the classroom. Class, this is our project for the week. Genevieve's eyes widened. She smiled. She knew what this project was about. I can't wait, she chimed in. She was dreaming of becoming a veterinarian, and now she was going to hatch a real chick. Let's fry it up, Josh said from across the aisle. Genevieve frowned. Josh always made a joke of everything. This was an innocent life in the teacher's hands, not breakfast. Not today, Miss Skeen said. You will each take care of an egg for 7 days. Juliet, Genevieve's best friend, groaned from the next row. A whole week? That's like forever. But to Genevieve, it wasn't long enough. Surely it would take more than that to incubate an egg. Miss Skeen held up a large carton. I got these at the grocery store, and I've carefully inspected each egg. The grocery store? Said Theo from the back. He always questioned everything and knew practically everything. Miss Skeen, store-bought eggs are sterile. A live chicken is not coming out of that. You're right, Theo. Miss Skeen returned the egg to the carton. The point of this project is to learn a few things about life, not the life cycle. The eggs won't hatch? Genevieve said, disappointed. No hatching, Miss Skeen confirmed. Instead, I want you to learn what it's like to care for something, or someone in this case. And what better way is there than using an egg that is fragile and helpless? Treat your eggs as if they are your children. Give them names, take them wherever you go, and record your experiences. If, for any reason, you can't take care of the egg, you may have someone else egg sit, like parents do when they can't be with their kids. She began to hand out the eggs. No matter what, you are responsible for the egg. Your eggs are specially marked with my stamp and will be inspected in class every day. If the eggs are scratched, nicked, or punctured in any way, I will deduct points from your final score. If the egg is broken or mysteriously replaced, you will receive no credit. Genevieve jotted down everything Miss Skeen said. Though she was bummed that she wouldn't be hatching a live chick, she still liked the project. If she was going to be a vet, she would take good care of her egg in need. This would be a test, one she was determined to pass. When Miss Skeen gave Genevieve her egg, she held it gently in her hands and named it Chloe. Everyone made baskets for their eggs out of cardstock, pipe cleaners, and cotton balls. Genevieve built her carrier extra strong, reinforcing the sides and sticking in twice the amount of cotton balls for padding. She labeled the carrier Chloe and colored the cotton balls pink. Josh pretended to gag at Genevieve's basket. You are taking this way too seriously. Genevieve rolled her eyes just as homeroom was dismissed. She proudly carried Chloe everywhere, to her classes, the water fountain, and the cafeteria. And as she sat next to Juliet at lunch, an egg went flying past her head. Josh and his buddy Calvin were playing a game of toss over Genevieve's table. Genevieve and Juliet looked on in horror. Are they crazy? Juliet said. Calvin missed Josh's egg, and Hulk dropped to the floor. Splat! Oops! But instead of getting mad at Calvin, Josh only shrugged. Guess that's a 0 for me. Calvin and Josh laughed. Boys, Juliet said, I'd never let them babysit my egg. She patted her egg. You'll be safe, Leona, she cooed. Genevieve agreed with Juliet as she scooted Chloe closer to herself. Yeah, one of these boys egg sitting would be a disaster. As the week wore on, more eggs succumbed to carelessness and mishandling. Dan's egg fell out of his bike basket when he went over a bump. Aaron's egg was eaten by his dog, Shark. Even Claire's egg got cracked when she took it to the mall. By Friday, only half the eggs were still okay, including Genevieve's egg, Chloe. Last night, Juliet said at lunch, my brother tried to play tennis with Leona. This project is driving me nuts. Leona will never survive my horseback riding lessons this weekend. Genevieve felt bad for Juliet. Taking care of her own egg hadn't been all that hard for her. Maybe I could take care of Leona for you, Genevieve offered. Juliet brightened. Really? You're the only one I can trust. You're so good with Chloe. She gave Genevieve a hug. I'll pay you with chocolate, I promise. No need. Just drop her off at my house tonight. Suddenly, Genevieve's whole table was swarming with classmates. Did I hear that you're going to babysit Juliet's egg for free? Ethan said. Take Tiger for me. He thrust the egg in her face. I'm going to ride a roller coaster tomorrow, and there's no way he'll survive that. I couldn't trust him with anyone but you. Genevieve looked at poor, innocent Tiger with a bandage on his head. She couldn't say no. Okay, bring him to my house tonight by 7. Deal. By the end of lunch, Genevieve became the official egg sitter for almost everyone in the class who still had an intact egg. Genevieve didn't mind. She cared about those eggs. They would be her little patients. She knew she could do it, and it would be a win-win for everyone. When Genevieve went to science class, Theo stopped by her lab table. Drop off your egg by 7 p.m., Genevieve whispered as she studied an amoeba through a microscope. Actually, Theo said, resting his egg carrier beside Chloe's, don't you think you're making a mistake egg sitting for everyone? Genevieve looked up. What do you mean? You're going to take care of all those eggs, including your own, for 3 days? Shouldn't you focus on Chloe? You're getting taken advantage of. Genevieve went back to her microscope. Technically, Theo, it's only 2.5 days. Monday morning, everyone will get the eggs back, and I'm perfectly capable of taking care of more than one egg. Then she eyed Theo suspiciously. And why do you care anyway? Just thought I'd point out the obvious, Theo replied. Well, if you're going to keep the eggs, maybe I can help. You? Help? Genevieve said. Why would Theo want to do that? Then something occurred to her. How come you aren't giving your egg to me? Why should I? Theo said. I've been spending the whole week trying to figure out how to hatch my egg into a chick. Genevieve was confused. But you said the eggs were sterile. Why would you try to do that? Because Theo glanced away, his face turning red. Because I want to be a scientist, he blurted. Scientist? Theo doesn't need to be embarrassed about something like that, Genevieve thought. I see. Never mind then. Theo picked up his egg. Clearly you have this covered. Forget I asked. He walked back to his table. Genevieve peeked over at Chloe. We don't need Theo's help, do we? That evening, 14 eggs arrived at her doorstep to receive proper care from Dr. Genevieve. She built a special carrier for them out of a milk crate and egg cartons, careful to label and note the condition of each egg upon arrival. All weekend long, she got the eggs plenty of exercise and fresh air by taking them to the park in a stroller. She talked to them for company and sang them songs to keep them entertained. She even read them bedtime stories before lights out. When Genevieve walked into homeroom on Monday, she felt like a hero. She carefully placed the crate of eggs on her desk and set Chloe down beside it. Her classmates gathered around and tried to retrieve their eggs, but Genevieve waved their hands away. It's the last inspection. Don't touch them. You don't want something to happen now, do you? Juliet withdrew her hand and like she had touched a hot stove. Good point. Genevieve, Miss Skeen said from the front of the room, Why don't you walk everyone's eggs up so I can check them? No problem, Genevieve said proudly. She firmly gripped the handles of the crate and headed toward her teacher, knowing that because of her excellent care, these eggs would make it to the end of the project. As Genevieve walked up the aisle, she was wondering if she would get extra credit for doing such a great job when suddenly she tripped on something and the crate went flying. Oh no! The eggs flew through the air. Genevieve caught herself on Theo's desk. The eggs! Crack, crack, splat, splat, splat. Everyone gasped. Miss Skeen was a goopy, eggy mess. Goodness gracious! Genevieve could hardly look. Miss Skeen was covered in egg yolk and runny whites. Genevieve turned to see what had tripped her. There was nothing in the aisle, but Josh was at his desk with his hands folded in front of him. He looked like a cat that had just swallowed a mouse. He had tripped her. She just knew it. Josh! Josh's face looked surprised. What? Apparently no one had seen Josh trip her. Genevieve, you tripped on purpose, didn't you? Ethan said. I knew I shouldn't have trusted Tiger to a girl. Juliet came to Genevieve's defense. That's crazy. She'd never do that on purpose. Yes, she would, Calvin joined in. Why do you think she took care of our eggs for free? She had this planned all along. Class! Miss Skeen tried to get everyone's attention, but no one listened. I didn't plan this, Genevieve retorted, but everyone ignored her. You're right, Calvin. Josh got up and pointed at Chloe. Look whose egg is still perfect. Genevieve's egg. Class! Miss Skeen called again, but everyone ignored her. They were all too busy watching 5 boys rush Chloe. No! Genevieve couldn't stop them. In seconds, Chloe was in midair, dangling from Ethan's fingertips. Now you can see what it feels like. Ethan, don't you dare, Miss Skeen warned. But he did. Sayonara! Chloe dropped from his fingers. Genevieve squeezed her eyes shut. Ping! Ping! She opened her eyes. Chloe was bouncing off the floor like a plastic ping-pong ball would. Ping! The egg bounced again before coming to rest in front of Calvin's feet. The whole class gasped again. That's not an egg, Josh said. Calvin grabbed it from the floor. It's plastic! You're a cheater! Genevieve was stunned. Theo shook his head. I told you not to trust them. Class, that's enough! Miss Skeen was shouting now. She shook a runny finger at them. No one say a word. Everyone got quiet. Miss Skeen straightened and attempted to smooth her goopy hair. Genevieve, Josh, Ethan, Theo. She then rattled off the names of the other boys who had all tried to get Genevieve's egg. Everyone, to the principal's office. When they arrived, Principal Cooler whirled around in her chair to stare at everyone. What's this I hear about an egg fight breaking out in the classroom? Immediately, Josh explained his conspiracy theory about Genevieve, blaming her for the entire egg disaster and calling her a cheater. As Josh talked, Genevieve sat quietly, afraid to speak. She'd never been in trouble like this before. She could hardly think. What had happened to Chloe? Why did Josh have to trip her? How could people be so mean despite everything she had done to help them? Is that so, Josh? The principal finally said after listening to the boy's tale. Seems to me that I've seen you and some of you other boys about a dozen times, but Genevieve has never gotten into trouble. Am I right? Genevieve nodded. The principal turned her attention to Theo. And what is your part in this, Theo? You're usually on my honor roll, not in my office. I swapped Genevieve's egg for a plastic one. Genevieve's jaw dropped. Theo took Chloe? And where is her egg? It's safe in my backpack and homeroom. I was going to return it to her before inspection, but I never got the chance. The principal scratched something down on a notepad. Now, why would you do such a thing, Theo? Genevieve turned to glare at Theo. Yeah, why? Theo shrugged, looking just as awkward as he had in science lab. No reason, really. Genevieve sighed. Maybe Theo had gone off the deep end. The principal set down her pen, frowning. Theo, seeing that this is your first offense and that there is no rule against the swapping of dairy products, you will return the egg to Genevieve immediately and you'll receive a written warning. And Josh, it appears you are wrong about Genevieve. I suspect she also didn't fall on purpose either. Josh swallowed. After the principal gave the other boys detention, they were dismissed. Theo tried to follow Genevieve down the hall. Let me explain. But Genevieve didn't want explanations. She sped up. She wanted to get away from everyone, especially Theo. The egg project was supposed to be fun and meaningful, but at that moment, she couldn't care less. That evening, Genevieve sat in her room trying to do homework, but she kept staring at Chloe's empty basket. She missed having an egg with her, even though no one else seemed to care. It was all a joke to them. Genevieve then wondered if something was wrong with her. Why did she have to care so much? Maybe it shouldn't matter to her either. The doorbell rang. Genevieve pushed back from her desk. I'll get it. When she opened the front door, Theo was standing there. His bike was resting against her front porch. He held up an egg in a new box filled with straw. Please, will you just take Chloe? Genevieve crossed her arms. Why should I? The project is over. He held the box up to her face. Chloe needs you. Genevieve stared at her egg, and she felt something twinge in her heart. It was good to see Chloe again, but she still couldn't ignore the fact that the whole egg ordeal bothered her. Cut it out, Theo. It's just an egg, like everyone says. It's not just an egg, Theo said. Oh, yeah? Then tell me why you took it. Theo looked away. His voice was barely audible. Because I care. What? Genevieve said. Because I care, all right? He said more firmly. Just take it, will you? You'll understand. He shoved the box into her hands. Keep her warm. If you've got a desk lamp with a high wattage bulb, that'll work. Genevieve was confused. Okay, she mumbled. Maybe Theo really had gone off the deep end. Theo grabbed the handlebars of his bike and turned to leave. Bye. Bye. Genevieve took the egg inside and carried Chloe to her room. She turned on her desk lamp. Under the glow of the light, Genevieve noticed that her egg had a hairline crack running along its side. Was the egg moving? A note was resting in the straw. She unfolded it. I'm the scientist. You're the vet. Now see what you can do with this. Genevieve peered at the egg again. Chloe? The egg moved. That night, Genevieve watched baby Chloe break her way out of her shell. As she looked at something so tiny and innocent emerge from its protective home, what the other kids thought didn't seem to matter anymore. She looked at the baby chick, peeping with new life. Maybe she and Theo weren't that different, after all. She cared. That's all that mattered. So when we think, boys and girls, about the word, the code for cracking an epic life, I wonder what word would come to mind after reading this chapter. Think of what words you could think of that match this chapter and drop me a message in the chat or on the stream. I look forward to hearing your thoughts.